This is a story about, hey, why we all come to festivals. It's to remember to live life to its fullest, to play, and when life gets really tough, to remember to sing and to dance because it makes you feel better and you can get through anything when you do that. It's a story about a young woman who lived with her mother. And it's set in Czechoslovakia. And I've been told by my gypsy friend that this is a very old story and there are many, many versions, just like many of the stories that come from the oral tradition. You find one, you like it, you change it a bit, and then you tell it to someone who knows about 100 more. Ask Brian. He does a lot of research behind the stories. So I'm just learning the research behind this story, but I love what it's about. In a small village, there was a young girl who lived with her mother, and their job was to weave every day, 7 days a week, for that's how they ate and that's how they lived. And although she was only a young woman, her mother taught her to weave and said that is the way you will make your living too. From the time she was little, that's all she knew how to do. And when the summer came, well, that was her favourite time of all, because in the winter they were stuck in the cabin together, weaving away all day. But in the spring and the summer, this young girl got to go out into the forest, into the birch forest, with her goats and with her basket of flax ready to weave, and she could go wherever she liked. And there was one place that she loved to go. It was her favourite tree of all, a really tall, old birch tree deep in the forest. And she'd race the goats to get there, and she'd sit under that tall birch tree with her weaving, and she knew that she had to do the weaving first before she got up and danced. And she used to be pretty good at that. She would weave as fast as she possibly could, and then when she had just enough time, or sometimes in the middle of what she was meant to be doing, she would just jump up and start dancing for joy. For there she was, in the middle of the forest, the birch forest in spring and summer, full of birds singing and colours and dappled light in the leaves and the smell of fresh grass and everywhere you looked, little tiny wildflowers popping up. It was simply divine. And what can you do when you're standing in divinity but dance and sing? And so that's what she did. This one day she was so happy. She jumped up and she started to dance around in the woods all on her own, for no one else was there watching her other than the birds, and they loved it. And as she was dancing and singing, la 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 la, woo, la 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 la, she sensed something behind her, and she turned. And there, beside her tree, was the most beautiful woman she'd ever seen. She was wearing a long, white, lacy spiderweb dress, and she had long, flowing golden hair that reached all the way below her bottom. She had bare feet and a wreath of flowers in her hair, those wildflowers that she loved so. And she smiled and she said, "Oh, Betuschka, how did you know my name?" "I know everything." "Betuschka, you are such a wonderful dancer. Come, let me dance with you. Let me dance." Well, how could Betuschka resist? She was so used to dancing alone, and now she had a friend to dance with, a beautiful friend at that. And with that, they joined hands and they began to dance around the birch tree together. They danced and they danced and they danced and they danced. Oh, it was almost too fast for her. They danced and they danced until the night almost came. And Betuschka dropped her hands and said, "Oh no, I haven't finished my weaving. My mother will be furious with me. This is what she needs to take to the markets to sell tomorrow." The maiden looked at her and said, "Do not worry, Betuschka. Just give her what you've got and go home happy." And so it was. Betuschka ran back through the forest all the way home with her half-finished basket of weaving. And she put the rest of the flax aside so that she could maybe double up her workload tomorrow and catch up, and then her mum wouldn't get mad. And well, she was lucky because her mum didn't really notice too much that night. And the very next day, Betuschka got up extra early. She gathered the goats, she gathered her weaving basket, and she ran back out through the forest to her favourite birch tree, ready to do some really hard work. She started weaving as fast as she possibly could, and she wove and she wove and she wove and she spun and she spun and she spun. But she felt that presence behind her again, and she looked, and there was that maiden smiling. Betuschka, let's dance. That was so much fun yesterday. I can't dance. I've got to work. Or I'll get in a lot of trouble. And she started to try and spin that flax. Concentrate on what you're doing. It's got to be done before sunset. Betuschka, come on. Just a little dance. Just a little. All right. And with that, she put her work down and she got up and she joined hands with the maiden again and began to dance. And they danced 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 and they danced. Until this time, the night sky fell upon them and Betuschka still had no work finished. What will I do? I can't even go home without this done. Don't worry, said the wood maiden. Don't worry. Come back tomorrow and all will be well. Tell your mother that you have not been feeling very well today. So Betuschka went home. And when she saw her mother, she presented what little work she had done. And her mother said, Betuschka, why have you worked so slowly today? This will not make me enough money at the markets. I'm sorry, Mother. I really wasn't feeling very well. I promise I'll catch up tomorrow. I promise I'll get up extra early and I'll do it all very well. So the very next day, Betuschka jumped out of bed, grabbed her basket, ran into the birch forest all the way to her favourite tree. And there was the forest maiden waiting for her with a glowing smile. Betuschka, let's dance. No, I can't dance. I have to finish my work. Betuschka, trust me. We will dance and you will have work finished to take home. Betuschka didn't know what to do. She was so torn between the two, but she was only a young girl, and singing and dancing was her greatest joy. And so with that, she looked into the maiden's eyes, and she trusted her magic, and she held her hands, and she began to dance again, and together they danced, and they danced, and they danced, and they danced. They danced until the night sky fell, and the forest maiden said, Now, Betuschka, go home. Take your basket with you, but do not look inside until you get home. So Betuschka, the trusting soul that she was, picked up her basket and began to walk back hurriedly through the forest. But the whole time she was thinking, well, how am I to know what's in this basket if I don't look? There may just be a whole bunch of unfinished, unspun flax, and then I'm going to be in big trouble. I better just have a little look to see what's there. And she had a little look. Just leaves. It was a trick. She'd been tricked. And just as she was about to throw the basket out of desperation into the forest, she noticed a glimmer of gold and she looked again, and there in the basket she saw that underneath the leaves were gold, pieces of gold. She ran back to her house, back to her mother, where she knew her mother wouldn't be pleased that she hadn't done the work. But when her mother saw the gold, she gave the basket to her mother. The mother looked and she said, Betuschka, what is this? Oh, Mother, I'm sorry I haven't been doing my work, but I met a maiden in the woods and we danced and we sang, and I have had the most wonderful 3 days of my life, and this is what she has given us in return. And with that, her mother looked at her and said, Betuschka, this is all very well, but do you know who you have been dancing with? No, Mother. Betuschka, you have been dancing with the maiden of the forest, and the maiden of the forest, she loves to dance so much that she will dance you to death. Thank goodness you have made it back here. And with that, well, they had their gold. She had her daughter. What could her mother do? For in her soul, she too loved to dance and to sing. So together they took each other's hands And around the house, they began to sing and dance, just like Betuschka had with the wooden maiden. La 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 la. Woo! La 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 la. A fortune. La 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 la. And that's the story of Betuschka and the wooden maiden. And I'm told if you go into the deep forest and you meet a forest maiden, well, you can decide, will I dance or will I walk away? Thank you.